Imagine walking on a path where wealth does not enslave you but liberates you. A path where every coin becomes a key to blessings, every transaction a step towards peace, and every act of giving a doorway to multiplied abundance. This is not a dream. It is a divine roadmap laid out clearly in the Qur'an, guiding us to ethical wealth, wealth that nourishes both the hand and the heart. Wealth is not denied, but purified through right intention. Wealth in its essence is neutral, neither good nor evil. It is a tool, a form of energy, and a means through which human beings engage with the world. It can build hospitals, feed the hungry, and create opportunities, or it can corrupt, enslave, and destroy. The difference lies not in the presence of wealth itself, but in the heart and intention behind it. The Qur'an never denies the pursuit of wealth, for sustenance is a divine gift. What it calls for is purification, purification of purpose, purification of means, and purification of use. When wealth is pursued only for greed, pride, or domination, it loses its blessing. It becomes heavy, like a chain around the soul, pulling it down into fear and constant dissatisfaction. A person may gather mountains of gold, yet find no peace in their sleep, no sweetness in their meals, no lightness in their heart. This is wealth without purification, wealth burdened with selfish intention. But when wealth is sought with the intention to serve, to provide, to uplift, and to share, it is transformed. It carries within it a light, a hidden blessing that multiplies and nourishes. Purification of wealth begins with the intention at the moment of earning. Honest trade, transparent dealings, and fairness in transactions are not just business principles, but acts of worship. Every contract signed with truth, every coin earned without deception, becomes sanctified. The Qur'an elevates this kind of wealth because it reflects justice and integrity. It is not about how much is gathered, but about how it is gathered. An income born from exploitation, dishonesty, or oppression cannot bring blessing, no matter how large the number appears on paper. Yet, a modest earning, made with clean hands and a clear conscience, holds more value in the scales of the unseen. Right intention also governs how wealth is held in the heart. Wealth is meant to be in the hand, not on the throne of the heart. When one clings to possessions as though they are the source of life, fear arises. Fear of losing, fear of lacking, fear of tomorrow. This fear is a sign that wealth has become a false master. But when the heart knows that wealth is a trust, a gift to be used wisely and shared generously, there is peace. The intention shifts from ownership to stewardship, and with that shift comes freedom. Purification also extends to the way wealth is spent. A portion of every earning is meant to return to others through charity. This is not loss, but cleansing. Giving removes selfishness, it loosens the grip of attachment, and it reaffirms that wealth is not the true source of security. The Qur'an teaches that what is given in the path of goodness is not diminished, but multiplied in ways unseen. A single coin given with sincerity outweighs treasures given with arrogance. The right intention behind giving turns every act of generosity into an investment in eternity. Wealth purified by intention flows like a river, nourishing all it touches. It circulates, it uplifts, it builds communities rather than isolating individuals. When wealth is hoarded, it stagnates like water trapped in a swamp, breeding decay. But when wealth is guided by the right intention, to create, to heal, to support, it becomes alive, constantly replenished. The generous hand is never empty, for it is connected to the source of all provision. The purification of wealth is therefore not about renouncing riches, nor about glorifying poverty, but about alignment. It is aligning the pursuit of wealth with truth, the holding of wealth with humility, and the spending of wealth with compassion. The Qur'an does not deny wealth because wealth itself is not the enemy. It is the misuse of wealth, the corruption of intention, and the blindness of the heart that turn wealth into a burden. Right intention transforms it into a blessing, a path of service, and a means of drawing closer to the divine. Money is a trust, not an ownership. The human being is never the ultimate possessor of wealth, for all that exists belongs to the Creator, and man is but a trustee. Every coin, every possession, every resource placed in one's hand carries responsibility. To claim ownership is to mistake the temporary for the eternal. You may hold wealth today, but tomorrow it may pass to another, just as it came to you from one before. Recognizing money as a trust softens pride, tempers greed, and calls forth humility in the way it is used. When money is viewed as ownership, the heart clings to it with fear and arrogance. A person may say, "This is mine," and no one has a claim to it, yet the truth of life reveals otherwise. Illness, disaster, or even a shift in circumstance can take it away in a moment. Death itself is the greatest proof, for no wealth follows into the grave. The mindset of ownership creates attachment, but the awareness of trust creates stewardship. A steward asks, "How shall I use this gift rightly?" This question opens the door to wisdom, while ownership closes it with selfishness. A trust carries accountability. When money is entrusted to you, it is not simply to indulge every desire, but to manage it with balance. The Qur'an teaches moderation, never wastefulness, never miserliness, but a middle path of responsible flow. Every coin spent is a choice that reflects the heart's condition. To see money as a trust is to recognize that each transaction is witnessed, each decision weighed, and each act of generosity or neglect written as part of one's legacy. This awareness transforms the simplest use of wealth into an act of significance. The trust of money extends beyond personal benefit. It is not given solely for one's comfort, but also for the upliftment of others. The poor, the orphan, the traveler, the community in need, all have a share in the trust that has been placed in your hands. Giving is not charity alone, it is the fulfillment of trust. To withhold when one has the means is to betray that trust, while to share is to honor it. Wealth thus becomes a channel of justice, ensuring that no soul is forgotten and that provision flows as it was divinely intended. When money is seen as a trust, it changes the way one relates to status and pride. Ownership often breeds arrogance, as though wealth elevates a person above another. But if wealth is a trust, pride dissolves, for it is clear that the gift could have been placed in any other hand. This realization keeps the heart soft, free from looking down upon others. The wealthy and the poor alike are tested, one by how they use abundance, the other by how they endure lack. Both stand before the same giver, accountable for their response. To treat money as a trust is also to detach from fear of loss. If money belongs ultimately to the divine, then its coming and going are not causes for despair. The heart rests in knowing that provision flows according to wisdom, not accident. What departs was never truly yours to keep, and what arrives was always destined for your hand. This trust releases the soul from constant anxiety, allowing it to act with generosity instead of clinging with desperation. Money as a trust calls for alignment in earning as well. It cannot be taken through unjust means, for that would be to misuse what is not truly yours. Dishonest earnings are like mismanaging another's property. They may glitter for a time, but they carry no blessing. Right intention, honest labor, and ethical dealings are all signs of a trustee honoring the responsibility placed upon them. When money is gained in purity and used in service, the trust is fulfilled with beauty and balance. The consciousness of trust transforms wealth from a static possession into a dynamic responsibility. It shifts the perspective from "how much can I gather" to "how faithfully can I use what is placed in my hand." It calls forth generosity, accountability, humility, and peace. Money ceases to be a burden or an idol and becomes instead a sacred trust, a means of fulfilling divine purpose in the material world. Abundance flows when gratitude is practiced. Gratitude is the key that unlocks hidden doors of provision, both seen and unseen. It is not simply a word whispered after receiving, but a state of the heart that recognizes every blessing as a gift. When the heart is anchored in gratitude, even the smallest of provisions feel abundant, and in this state of appreciation, increase naturally follows. Gratitude is magnetic. It draws more to itself, for what is acknowledged and cherished grows. The one who complains shuts the door on blessings, for complaint focuses on what is absent, creating a sense of lack. Gratitude, however, magnifies what is present, creating a sense of fullness. This inner state reflects outwardly, attracting more opportunities, more ease, more doors opening at the right time. The Qur'an declares that when gratitude is shown, blessings are increased. This is not only a spiritual promise, but also a natural law woven into the fabric of existence. Abundance is not always measured in material gain. Sometimes it manifests as peace, health, supportive relationships, or clarity of purpose. Gratitude expands perception, allowing one to see blessings in every detail. A meal becomes more than food. It becomes a gift of nourishment. A simple shelter becomes a sanctuary of safety. Even trials reveal themselves as opportunities for growth when viewed through the lens of gratitude. Thus, gratitude transforms life itself into a treasure chest of abundance, overflowing with meaning and value. Gratitude is practiced not only with the tongue, but with the heart and action. To say thank you without feeling appreciation in the heart is shallow. To feel appreciation, yet not reflected in action, is incomplete. True gratitude is expressed in using blessings wisely, in sharing what you have, in avoiding waste, and in recognizing the giver in every gift. When blessings are honored in this way, they multiply, for gratitude safeguards wealth from decline and infuses it with unseen increase. A grateful heart is never empty. Even in times of little, it sees plenty. This inner richness becomes the foundation for outer abundance. The discontented heart, however, is poor even when surrounded by wealth. No amount satisfies the one who is blind to what is already present. Gratitude dissolves this blindness, replacing it with clarity and contentment. And contentment itself is a form of wealth, for the one who feels rich within never fears scarcity. The practice of gratitude is also a protection against envy. Envy focuses on what others have and blinds one to their own gifts. Gratitude shifts the gaze inward, towards one's own blessings, restoring peace. When envy is removed, the heart becomes lighter, freer to receive without comparison. This openness allows abundance to flow without resistance, for nothing blocks provision more than resentment over another's share. Gratitude clears these blockages, allowing blessings to flow naturally, unhindered. Gratitude also elevates the act of giving. When you recognize that what you hold is a gift, giving becomes joyful rather than burdensome. You give not out of fear of loss, but out of thankfulness for what you already have. In this way, gratitude and generosity feed one another. Gratitude inspires giving, and giving inspires further gratitude. Together, they create a cycle of abundance that never runs dry. Practicing gratitude daily is a form of remembrance. Each moment of appreciation reconnects the soul with its source. This alignment opens the way for provision to arrive at the right time, in the right form. Abundance flows when gratitude is present because gratitude harmonizes the heart with divine order. It tunes the soul to the frequency of increase, ensuring that no blessing goes unnoticed and no provision goes unappreciated. Ethical wealth requires removing greed from the heart. Greed is the shadow that distorts the natural flow of abundance. It is the hunger that never rests, the thirst that is never quenched, the endless grasping for more while overlooking the blessings already present. The heart ruled by greed cannot experience peace no matter how much it acquires, for greed feeds on dissatisfaction. Ethical wealth, however, is rooted in contentment, fairness, and generosity, and these qualities cannot grow in soil poisoned by greed. To walk the path of ethical wealth, the heart must be cleansed of this restless craving. Greed transforms wealth from a tool into a master. When wealth is pursued only for its own sake, it enslaves the seeker, chaining them to fear and endless pursuit. The greedy soul spends life chasing, yet never truly receiving. Ethical wealth, by contrast, is pursued with purpose. It is wealth sought to sustain, to uplift, to create, and to serve. When greed is removed, wealth regains its rightful place, as a servant of higher values rather than a tyrant over the soul. Also breeds injustice. It drives exploitation, dishonesty, and oppression, for when the heart craves endlessly, it disregards fairness. The greedy merchant deceives, the greedy ruler hoards, the greedy hand withholds from the needy. Ethical wealth cannot be born in such soil. It flourishes only where fairness, honesty, and compassion are honored. The absence of greed allows justice to guide every transaction, making wealth not a source of corruption, but a channel of blessing. Removing greed does not mean rejecting wealth itself. Wealth is not condemned. Greed is. One may strive for prosperity with pure intentions, aiming to provide for family, to support community, to contribute to goodness. This striving is noble when greed is absent, for the pursuit is guided by responsibility rather than selfish craving. Ethical wealth is never about hoarding, it is about circulation. It moves, it flows, it benefits many, and in its movement lies its blessing. The cure for greed lies in gratitude and generosity. Gratitude reminds the heart of what it already holds, softening the constant yearning for more. Generosity breaks greed's grip, for every act of giving proves that true wealth is not in possession but in the ability to share. The one who gives freely loosens the chains of greed, and in return, abundance flows with greater ease. The paradox of wealth is revealed here. By letting go, you gain. By sharing, you increase. By releasing greed, you inherit peace. Contentment is another safeguard against greed. When the heart is content, even little appears vast. Contentment allows wealth to serve without dominating. It turns every provision into enough, and enough into plenty. Greed, however, blinds the heart, making even great fortunes feel lacking. Ethical wealth rests on the foundation of contentment, for only a content heart can use wealth wisely, without fear, without arrogance, and without harm. The path of ethical wealth is a path of purification. Greed must be identified, faced, and released. Each time the heart feels the pull of endless craving, it must be reminded of trust, that sustenance is written, that provision is guided, and that no soul will be deprived of what is destined for it. With this trust, the restless hunger of greed dissolves, and wealth becomes what it was always meant to be, a tool for service, a trust to be honored, and a blessing to be shared. Charity multiplies what you give, never decreases it. At first glance, the act of giving may seem like a subtraction. A coin leaves your hand, a portion departs from your wealth, and the visible measure of possession lessens. Yet the unseen truth works differently. In the divine order, giving is not loss, but increase. What is given with sincerity never diminishes, for it carries within it a seed of multiplication. Just as a single grain planted in fertile soil yields countless stalks, a single act of charity returns in ways far beyond its original form. Charity transforms the heart before it transforms the world outside. When you give, you release attachment and fear. The heart that clings tight to wealth fears scarcity, but the heart that gives proves to itself that sustenance flows from a higher source. In this release, peace enters. The act of giving cleanses the soul of greed, envy, and anxiety. Charity purifies not only wealth, but also the one who gives it, polishing the heart so it may reflect light more clearly. This inner purification is itself a multiplication, for peace and joy are riches no gold can equal. The multiplication of charity also manifests in the material realm. What leaves your hand often returns through unexpected doors. A generous person finds opportunities, support, and blessings arising at moments they could not have planned. The hand that gives never remains empty, for divine law ensures that generosity is replenished. The Qur'an describes charity as a loan to the divine, a loan that is repaid many times over. This promise is not symbolic. It is a reality experienced by those who give with open hearts. Charity increases wealth by creating circulation. When wealth is hoarded, it stagnates like water trapped in a swamp, breeding decay and fear. But when wealth moves, feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, building communities, it flows like a river, fresh and ever-renewing. This circulation sustains not only those who receive, but also those who give. For when you uplift another, you uplift yourself, and the cycle of generosity ensures that blessings continue to return. Charity multiplies because it attracts unseen favor. A generous reputation opens hearts, creates trust, and draws people closer. Communities built on giving thrive with unity and strength. In contrast, miserliness isolates, creating walls instead of bridges. Generosity plants seeds of goodwill that grow into networks of support, friendships, and alliances that no amount of selfish hoarding could ever purchase. This social multiplication is another way charity proves itself never to be a decrease. The act of giving also multiplies blessings in the next life. Every coin given, every act of kindness extended is recorded as an eternal investment. What seems small in this world weighs heavy on the scales of eternity. Ethical wealth is not measured only in temporary numbers, but in the lasting impact it creates beyond the material. Charity turns fleeting coins into everlasting treasures, preserved for the soul when worldly possessions are left behind. Even in the moment of giving, charity creates a multiplication of states within the giver. It multiplies gratitude, for in giving you recognize that you are blessed enough to give. It multiplies compassion, for in giving you strengthen the bond of humanity with another soul. It multiplies trust, for in giving you affirm that provision does not end with what you release. Each act of charity is thus an act of expansion, enlarging the soul, widening the heart, and deepening the connection to the source of all provision. Charity multiplies because it aligns with divine law. In the natural world, everything thrives by giving. The sun gives light, the earth gives fruit, the river gives water, and none are diminished by their giving. Instead, they fulfill their purpose through it. The human being, too, is designed to give, and when one gives, one steps into harmony with the very rhythm of creation. To withhold is to resist this rhythm, but to give is to flow with it, ensuring that abundance continues to circulate endlessly. Honest trade is a form of worship. Every transaction, every exchange, and every agreement between two souls carries spiritual weight. Business is not separate from devotion, for the marketplace too can become a sanctuary when truth governs its dealings. To trade honestly is to acknowledge that wealth does not come from deception, but from the blessing placed upon sincere effort. It is to remember that every buyer and seller stands before the same divine judge, and that integrity in commerce is not merely a social virtue but a sacred act. The dishonest merchant may gather coins quickly, but the blessing of that wealth slips away. Deception may glitter for a moment, yet it corrodes the heart and poisons the fruits of its gain. Wealth earned through lies carries heaviness, unrest, and fear of exposure. The dishonest hand counts profits, but loses peace. Honest trade, however, carries light. Even modest earnings gained through truth bear sweetness, for they are infused with blessing. What appears small in number may nourish more deeply than vast sums tainted by dishonesty. Honest trade reflects trust. When a customer knows they will not be cheated, they return with loyalty, and their trust multiplies the success of the merchant. This trust is not built on clever speech or false promises, but on consistency in fairness. In this way, honesty creates long-lasting prosperity, while deceit creates short-lived gain. Every honest act of trade becomes a seed planted in the soil of trust, and from this soil grows a harvest of abundance. The Qur'an elevates fairness in trade to an act of obedience, to weigh justly, to measure accurately, to charge without exploitation. These are not mere guidelines, but divine commands. When followed, they transform business into worship, for the trader remembers that the one who watches is greater than any customer or competitor. The scales of the market mirror the scales of the hereafter, where every hidden intention is weighed. Honest trade is thus preparation for that final accountability. To trade honestly is also to practice compassion. It is to see the customer not as a target for profit, but as a fellow human deserving respect. Ethical wealth arises from serving others, not exploiting them. A trader who provides fair value, who avoids deceit, who treats customers with dignity, is engaging in an act of service. This service is worship, for it honors both the Creator and creation. The profit that results is not merely financial, but spiritual, for it leaves behind satisfaction, goodwill, and blessing. Honesty in trade also protects the heart of the merchant. Deception requires vigilance to maintain lies, but truth brings ease. The honest trader sleeps peacefully, unburdened by fear of discovery. The dishonest one is restless, haunted by suspicion, always guarding against exposure. This inner peace is itself a form of wealth. It cannot be purchased, but it accompanies those who make honesty their foundation. The marketplace is often seen as worldly, yet in reality, it can be a place of immense spiritual practice. Patience, fairness, generosity, and truth all find expression in trade. Each negotiation becomes a test of integrity, each sale an opportunity to uphold justice. When approached with this awareness, business is no longer separate from devotion, but becomes part of it. A shop, an office, or a stall transforms into a place of remembrance, for every transaction echoes with the presence of the divine. Honest trade also ripples outward into society. It creates fairness in markets, stability in communities, and justice in economies. When dishonesty spreads, corruption grows, and trust erodes. But when honesty prevails, prosperity is shared, and wealth circulates with blessing. Each honest merchant contributes not only to personal success, but to the health of the entire community. This collective harmony is itself a form of worship, for it reflects the divine will for justice and balance on earth. Honest trade is therefore not a mere moral choice, but a sacred path. It turns the act of earning into an act of devotion, transforming profit into worship and business into a form of remembrance. It is through honesty that wealth is purified, communities are strengthened, and the soul is drawn nearer to the source of all provision. Interest-based exploitation blocks blessings. At its core, interest is the taking of gain without giving of effort, value, or service. It extracts from another's need, magnifying one person's comfort while deepening another's burden. The Qur'an warns against this practice, not because wealth itself is forbidden, but because such transactions corrupt the natural balance of justice. Interest turns money into a tool of oppression, where the rich grow richer through the struggles of the poor. Ethical wealth cannot grow from exploitation, for it carries no blessing when built upon the suffering of others. Wealth gained through interest may appear to increase in number, but its essence diminishes. It lacks harmony, it lacks peace, and it fails to bring true prosperity. Numbers in an account may rise, yet blessing slips away, leaving the heart restless and the wealth itself barren. Interest creates cycles of debt that strip dignity from those who borrow, chaining them to endless repayment. Such systems build palaces on the backs of the weary, but palaces built on injustice crumble, for no blessing can sustain them. Blessing flows where fairness is present. When wealth is exchanged for value, both sides benefit and justice is upheld. Honest trade gives profit to the seller and satisfaction to the buyer. Charity uplifts the giver and the receiver alike, but interest benefits one while draining the other. It feeds inequality and disrupts balance. In this imbalance lies the reason why blessings are withheld. The divine law favors justice, and anything that violates this law, no matter how profitable it appears, carries hidden loss. Interest-based dealings also harden the heart. They train the soul to see people as numbers and needs as opportunities for exploitation. Compassion weakens when profit is placed above humanity. The lender forgets that wealth is a trust, not an absolute possession, and begins to treat it as a weapon of control. This mindset erodes empathy, making the heart blind to suffering. Ethical wealth, however, is rooted in compassion, generosity, and fairness, qualities that cannot coexist with exploitation. The removal of interest is not a denial of growth, but an invitation to seek pure growth. Wealth can flourish through trade, investment, partnership, and innovation, avenues where value is created, shared, and multiplied. These forms of wealth building carry blessing because they honor effort, creativity, and fairness. When two parties share both risk and reward, their relationship deepens in trust and cooperation. Such arrangements bring prosperity that enriches communities, not just individuals. This is the opposite of interest, which isolates gain for one while loading loss upon another. Interest-based exploitation also fosters fear. The borrower lives in fear of repayment, while the lender clings to security in guaranteed profit. Both are trapped in anxiety, for neither rests in trust of divine provision. Blessing departs where fear rules, for fear shrinks the heart and blocks generosity. A heart free of interest, however, trusts that sustenance comes from the source, not from squeezing others. In this trust, peace flourishes and wealth flows more freely. Interest weakens societies by widening the gap between rich and poor. As wealth concentrates in fewer hands, resentment grows, injustice spreads, and communities fracture. A society built on debt becomes a society burdened by unrest. In contrast, when interest is removed, circulation increases and wealth moves to uplift more people. Communities built on fairness prosper together, bound by mutual care rather than divided by exploitation. This collective blessing strengthens not only individual lives but the fabric of society as a whole. Ethical wealth requires rejecting interest not out of fear of loss, but out of desire for true increase. It requires faith that what is earned through fairness will be enough, and that what is shared in generosity will return multiplied. Exploitation may create temporary profit, but it blocks the flow of divine favor. True prosperity lies in wealth that is clean, compassionate, and just. Wealth that nourishes rather than depletes, wealth that grows with blessing rather than diminishes in hidden ways. Spending wisely is as important as earning wisely. Wealth is not measured only by the effort of acquiring, but also by the wisdom of its use. Many labor diligently to gather, yet lose what they earn through careless spending. Others receive moderate means, but flourish because they use their provisions with thought and purpose. The Qur'an reminds that wealth is a trust, and every trust demands accountability. Just as dishonesty in earning corrupts wealth, recklessness in spending diminishes its blessing. To live with balance in expenditure is therefore as sacred as striving ethically in income. Spending wisely begins with intention. When money is used with awareness, each transaction becomes meaningful. To spend without thought is to scatter seeds on barren soil, where nothing grows, but to spend with reflection is to plant in fertile ground, where the harvest multiplies. Wise spending aligns with purpose, supporting needs, sustaining dignity, caring for family, uplifting community, and avoiding excess. In this way, wealth becomes not a fleeting possession, but a continuous flow of benefit. Extravagance is one of the great pitfalls of wealth. To indulge in waste, to spend for show, or to drown in luxuries that serve no true need weakens the blessing of wealth. The Qur'an condemns wastefulness, declaring that those who squander are companions of ruin. Extravagance empties the hand and hardens the heart, creating dependence on appearances rather than on truth. True prosperity is not measured by how much is displayed, but by how wisely resources are managed. Restraint, far from being a limitation, becomes a safeguard that preserves abundance. Miserliness is the opposite error, for to withhold excessively is also a misuse of wealth. Just as reckless spending depletes, hoarding without circulation blocks flow. Wealth is meant to move, to serve, to create, to uplift. When it is trapped in vaults of fear, it stagnates and loses blessing. Wise spending avoids both extremes. It is neither wasteful nor miserly, but balanced. It provides where provision is due, gives where giving is needed, and restrains where desires become empty cravings. Spending wisely also means prioritizing what brings lasting value. There are expenditures that fade quickly, leaving nothing behind but regret. And there are expenditures that echo through time, supporting education, building shelter, healing the sick, feeding the hungry. These acts transform wealth into legacy. They ensure that the blessing of wealth outlives the moment of its use. To spend wisely is to look beyond temporary satisfaction and to choose investments that carry weight both in this life and the next. The wise spender also understands the dignity of provision. To care for family, to clothe children, to honor guests, to provide comfort for those under one's responsibility, all these are acts of worship when done with sincerity. They reflect gratitude for the gift of wealth and respect for its purpose. In these simple acts of spending, blessing increases, for they align with divine order. The home where wealth is used with kindness becomes a sanctuary filled with tranquility and light. Spending wisely requires self-awareness. Many spend to fill emptiness, to chase validation, to numb pain. Such spending never satisfies, for it addresses symptoms rather than causes. The wise heart pauses before spending, asking, "Is this a true need or a fleeting desire? Will this purchase serve growth, or will it enslave me further to want?" This pause creates space for discernment, turning every transaction into a conscious choice rather than a reflex of desire. When spending is wise, wealth itself expands. The same income that dwindles in careless hands stretches in careful ones. The same provision that feels scarce when wasted feels abundant when honored. Blessing does not rest in numbers alone, but in how those numbers are used. Wealth guided by wisdom becomes a river that nourishes widely, while wealth misused becomes a flood that destroys. The true art of wealth, therefore, is not only in the gathering, but in the spending. For in wise expenditure lies the secret of sustained abundance. Wealth should circulate, not stagnate. Money is like water, its blessing lies in its movement. When it flows, it nourishes, uplifts, and sustains life. But when it is trapped and hoarded, it becomes stale, losing its vitality and creating imbalance. The Qur'an emphasizes that wealth must not be confined to the hands of a few, but should move through society so that all may benefit. Circulation ensures justice, while stagnation breeds greed, inequality, and hardship. Ethical wealth is living wealth, wealth that breathes through generosity, trade, charity, and service. When wealth is hoarded, it creates spiritual decay. The heart that clings tightly to possessions grows rigid, defined by fear of loss. Such a heart mistakes security for accumulation, yet the more it gathers, the less secure it feels. True security lies not in the hoard, but in trust, the awareness that provision flows from a higher source and that releasing wealth into circulation invites replenishment. Just as stagnant water breeds disease, stagnant wealth breeds misery, both for the one who withholds and for the community deprived of its benefit. Circulation of wealth creates balance. When wealth is shared through charity, business, and fair exchange, communities thrive. Needs are met, opportunities are created, and justice is upheld. A single act of giving can ripple outward, touching countless lives. For example, when one supports a worker, that worker feeds a family, that family supports local markets, and the blessing multiplies. Wealth moves like a current, and in its movement, it gains power. In this way, circulation expands abundance, while stagnation diminishes it. The natural world reflects this principle. The river that flows renews the land, but the pond that traps water dries at the edges and turns sour. The tree gives fruit each season, and in giving, it ensures its own renewal. In the same way, human wealth is sustained through giving, trading, and sharing. When wealth is trapped in vaults of fear, it cuts itself off from the cycle of life. Circulation aligns human action with divine order, ensuring that wealth fulfills its true purpose. Circulation also prevents corruption. When wealth is concentrated in few hands, power becomes distorted. The gap between rich and poor widens, leading to injustice, resentment, and unrest. But when wealth is encouraged to move, it bridges divides and strengthens society. Charity redistributes resources, trade creates mutual benefit, and fair wages dignify labor. Each act of circulation preserves harmony, preventing the imbalance that stagnation creates. For the individual, circulation nurtures peace of heart. Giving frees one from attachment, spending wisely ensures balance, and investing in others creates joy. Holding wealth too tightly traps the soul in fear, fear of loss, fear of theft, fear of insufficiency. But allowing wealth to flow removes this fear, for the heart learns that loss is never true loss when what is given is returned in blessing. The generous hand is never truly empty, for it remains open to receive. Wealth that circulates also creates legacy. Money spent on good causes continues to work long after it leaves one's possession. A school built, a meal provided, a shelter raised, these acts echo through generations, turning temporary wealth into timeless impact. Stagnant wealth, however, dies with its hoarder, leaving behind nothing but numbers without meaning. The flowing of wealth transforms it into something greater than possession. It becomes service, memory, and light. Circulation is not recklessness. It does not mean careless spending or indulgence in waste. It means purposeful movement, directed towards growth, goodness, and fairness. It means spending where needs are real, giving where hearts are uplifted, and investing where communities are strengthened. Such circulation multiplies wealth in both seen and unseen ways, while stagnation shrinks it into lifeless numbers. Wealth should circulate, for in its movement lies its blessing. When it flows, it connects hearts, strengthens societies, and purifies the soul. When it is trapped, it withers, bringing neither peace to the one who holds it, nor benefit to those who need it. The path of ethical wealth calls for wealth that moves like a river, blessing every life it touches, and returning always to its source replenished. Giving secretly brings divine favor. There is a unique purity in an act of generosity that seeks no recognition. When a gift is offered without announcement, without applause, without the desire for acknowledgement, it ascends directly to the realm of the unseen. It is no longer bound by the ego's hunger for validation, but instead becomes a whisper between the soul and its creator. In this hidden giving lies a power that multiplies the blessing, for it is untainted by pride and untouched by vanity. When charity is done openly, it may inspire others, and such acts are not without merit. Yet when it is done in secrecy, it reflects the highest sincerity. In secrecy, the giver is free from the temptation of showing off, free from the need for human approval. The act itself becomes the reward, and the heart becomes the witness. It is a test of intention. Do we give to be seen, or do we give because the heart is moved by compassion and devotion? In this hidden sincerity, divine favor descends, for the act is done purely for the sake of truth. Secret giving also protects the dignity of the receiver. No one is placed in a position of exposure or shame, for the help arrives quietly, like rain upon dry soil. The receiver is uplifted without being burdened by gratitude or indebtedness to a name or face. This hidden compassion preserves the bond of humanity, reminding both giver and receiver that wealth belongs not to the self, but to the source who provides. In this way, secret giving becomes a shield, guarding both hearts from arrogance on one side and humiliation on the other. The unseen world records what the seen world does not. Every coin given in silence, every act of kindness hidden from human eyes, is weighed with precision. Though the world may overlook it, the blessing flows in ways unseen: health, peace, unexpected provision, protection from harm. These are the invisible rewards of secret giving, the divine favor that comes not as applause, but as mercy. Just as seeds buried in the dark soil sprout into life, so do hidden acts of charity blossom into blessings that fill both worlds. Secret giving also trains the heart in detachment. The ego thrives on recognition, constantly seeking affirmation. To give secretly denies the ego its satisfaction, forcing the soul to act from sincerity rather than pride. It purifies intention and deepens faith, teaching that one does not need the approval of others when the approval of the divine is sufficient. In this training, the heart grows lighter, freer, no longer bound to the chains of self. There is a sweetness in giving that no one knows but the giver. It is a joy that requires no witness, a quiet celebration within the soul. This hidden joy is itself a favor, a gift from the unseen to the one who has released wealth with sincerity. The act may seem small, unnoticed by the world, but in the unseen it is weighty, filling the scales with light. The divine favor is not measured in human recognition, but in the unseen balance of mercy and provision. Secret giving also invites trust. When one gives quietly, the reliance is placed not on human appreciation, but on divine recompense. It becomes an affirmation of faith that nothing given for the sake of truth is ever lost. What departs from the hand in silence returns in ways greater than one can imagine. Sometimes it returns in material provision, other times in protection from harm, or in the opening of unexpected doors. This unseen circulation builds unshakable certainty that true wealth lies not in what is kept, but in what is released. The heart that practices secret giving becomes refined. It learns to release without clinging, to give without seeking return, to love without condition. Such a heart attracts divine favor, for it reflects the qualities of mercy, compassion, and sincerity. The blessing is not only in what is given, but in what the act shapes the soul to become. To give secretly is to align with the hidden flow of grace, to step into a current of abundance that moves quietly yet powerfully. Contentment is greater than accumulation. The heart that is satisfied with what it has holds a treasure that no amount of gold can surpass. Accumulation chases endlessly, yet contentment rests in peace. A person may gather wealth until their storerooms overflow, yet if the soul remains restless, the abundance feels hollow. Another may live with little, yet if their heart is content, they walk in freedom and joy. True wealth lies not in numbers written on a page, nor in possessions piled high, but in the state of a heart that says, "What I have is enough." Accumulation is a pursuit without end. The more one gathers, the more the desire expands, and satisfaction remains just out of reach. Wealth increases, but so do anxieties, comparisons, and fears of loss. The soul becomes a servant to possessions, always striving, never at rest. Contentment breaks this cycle. It silences the endless craving, freeing the soul from the illusion that happiness lies in what is yet to be gained. In contentment, the present moment becomes rich, and the blessings already in hand are magnified. Contentment is not indifference, nor is it laziness. It does not reject effort, ambition, or growth. Rather, it is a harmony between striving and gratitude. One works with dedication, but the heart does not attach its worth to accumulation. Effort is offered, results are welcomed, yet peace does not depend on excess. Contentment allows one to pursue excellence without being enslaved by the outcome. It transforms work into service and wealth into a tool, never into an idol. The Quranic spirit teaches that the one who is content possesses a kingdom within. This inner kingdom cannot be stolen, taxed, or diminished by circumstance. It is wealth that no thief can touch and no calamity can destroy. Accumulation depends on outer conditions, markets, profits, inheritances, but contentment depends only on the inner gaze. When the gaze shifts from what is missing to what is present, from what is lacking to what is given, abundance reveals itself. Contentment turns little into plenty and plenty into peace. Accumulation often leads to comparison. The eye looks at what others possess and feels restless. Envy arises and joy disappears, yet contentment shields the heart from this trap. A content soul rejoices in the blessings of others, for it does not measure its worth by comparison. It understands that provision flows uniquely to each person, tailored to their path and purpose. Contentment transforms the heart into a sanctuary of gratitude, where joy is constant regardless of what others may gain. Contentment also deepens generosity. The one who accumulates with fear clings tightly to every coin, afraid of losing. But the one who is content releases easily, for they know they already have enough. In their giving, they experience no loss, only expansion. Their wealth circulates freely, and their heart remains light. Contentment multiplies blessings not by gathering more, but by removing the illusion of scarcity. In this way, contentment becomes the foundation of ethical wealth, allowing abundance to flow without the chains of greed. Accumulation without contentment creates burden. The more possessions increase, the heavier the responsibility, the greater the fear, the more restless the heart. But contentment brings lightness, no matter the scale of wealth. A small home feels spacious when the heart is at peace. A simple meal tastes rich when the soul is grateful. A single act of kindness feels abundant when contentment fills the giver. In this way, contentment transforms ordinary life into extraordinary blessing. The pursuit of accumulation often blinds one to the fleeting nature of the world. Wealth gathered may slip away, possessions may decay, and power may fade. But contentment remains unshaken, for it does not rest on what can be lost. It is anchored in trust, gratitude, and surrender to divine provision. This unshakable foundation creates true stability, a wealth that endures beyond circumstance. The soul that is content is untouchable, for its treasure lies in a realm beyond loss. Contentment is greater than accumulation, for accumulation is temporary while contentment is eternal. It frees the soul from restlessness, transforms wealth into peace, and allows gratitude to turn the smallest blessing into abundance. It is a hidden treasure greater than any visible fortune, a state of being that no amount of accumulation can replicate. Wealth must uplift others, not just self. When resources are gathered only for personal gain, their power becomes narrow and heavy. They create isolation rather than connection, anxiety rather than peace. True wealth, however, finds its meaning in the lives it touches, the doors it opens for others, and the burdens it helps to ease. It is not meant to be locked away in fear or clutched tightly in pride, but to flow like a river, nourishing the ground wherever it passes. A life devoted solely to self-accumulation shrinks inward. The more one gathers, the more one clings, and the soul becomes smaller even as the possessions grow larger. Wealth hoarded for the self alone creates restlessness, for it does not fulfill the deeper hunger of the soul. That hunger is for connection, compassion, and contribution. When wealth is shared, it gains life, carrying within it the breath of service and the fragrance of mercy. It becomes a blessing not only to the one who gives, but to all who are touched by it. To uplift others with wealth is to recognize that abundance is a trust. What one receives is never solely for personal enjoyment, but is also a responsibility. Every coin carries a question: will it serve only the self, or will it serve the greater good? This choice defines whether wealth becomes a source of light or a source of burden. When it is used to uplift, it multiplies in unseen ways, spreading benefit beyond measure. When it is withheld selfishly, it stagnates, losing its blessing. The Quranic vision of wealth emphasizes circulation, generosity, and justice. Wealth is described as something that should not remain circulating only among the rich. Its purpose is to balance society, to provide dignity for the poor, opportunities for the struggling, and relief for the vulnerable. In this vision, wealth becomes a bridge that connects hearts, weaving together a fabric of compassion. To uplift others with wealth is to align with this sacred vision, transforming possessions into instruments of harmony. When wealth uplifts others, it uplifts the giver as well. There is a joy that arises from seeing another person stand taller because of a gift, a burden lifted, or an opportunity created. This joy cannot be bought, for it is the soul's recognition of its higher purpose. It is a reminder that we are interconnected, that no blessing is complete until it spreads beyond the self. The more wealth is shared, the lighter the heart becomes, for generosity is a release that frees the soul from fear and attachment. Uplifting others with wealth also refines the character. It trains the heart to look outward rather than inward, to see the needs around it rather than just the desires within. It dissolves greed and nurtures compassion. A person who gives learns patience, humility, and trust. They come to understand that what is shared does not diminish wealth but expands it, not always in material numbers but in unseen blessings, peace of mind, protection, love, and favor. Communities flourish when wealth is used to uplift others. A single act of generosity can ripple outward, inspiring further acts of kindness. A school built, a debt relieved, a meal shared. These seeds create forests of possibility. Each act contributes to a culture of care where wealth becomes not a wall, but a bridge. In such a culture, prosperity is not limited to a few, but extends into the lives of many, strengthening the whole. Even the smallest use of wealth to uplift others carries weight. It is not the size of the gift that determines its value, but the intention and the impact. A small coin given sincerely may outweigh a fortune given for recognition. What matters is the heart's desire to relieve, to help, to uplift. This desire turns ordinary giving into extraordinary blessing, and in doing so, aligns the giver with divine favor. Wealth must uplift others, for that is its true purpose. When it is used selfishly, it chains the soul to greed. When it is shared, it frees the heart, blesses the community, and aligns the giver with the flow of abundance that never ends. Wealth finds its highest meaning not in what it secures for one life, but in how it uplifts many lives through acts of compassion, justice, and generosity. Balance between dunya, worldly life, and akhirah, hereafter, is key. The human journey is woven between two realms, the visible and the unseen, the temporary and the eternal. To live fully, one must honor both. Neglect of the dunya leads to weakness and dependency, while neglect of the akhirah leads to arrogance and heedlessness. The two are not enemies, but partners in harmony, guiding the soul to live with purpose and awareness. The dunya provides means, opportunities, and responsibilities. It is the ground upon which faith is tested, where actions take form, and where character is revealed. Wealth, health, relationships, and work all belong to the sphere of dunya. To dismiss these as meaningless is to ignore the very tools given for growth. At the same time, to cling to them as ultimate is to forget that they are only temporary, passing swiftly like shadows at sunset. The akhirah is the unseen destination, the eternal home where deeds are measured and intentions revealed. It gives weight to every action in dunya, reminding the heart that nothing is wasted and nothing is hidden. Without the akhirah, the dunya appears as a cycle of gain and loss, pleasure and pain, with no greater purpose. But with the akhirah in view, every moment gains significance, every choice becomes a seed for eternity, and every hardship carries meaning beyond itself. Balance arises when the dunya is embraced as a path, not a prison. One can work, earn, build, and enjoy without falling into forgetfulness, so long as the akhirah remains the compass. The Qur'an repeatedly reminds believers to seek their portion of the dunya while not neglecting their portion of the akhirah. This balance ensures that material pursuits do not eclipse spiritual responsibilities, and spiritual devotion does not neglect worldly duties. When dunya dominates, the heart becomes restless. Wealth, power, and status become the measure of success, and the akhirah fades into the background. The soul begins to chase endlessly, fearing loss and craving more, but peace never arrives. The temporary is mistaken for permanent, and the eternal is forgotten. In this imbalance, even abundance feels empty, for it lacks meaning beyond the moment. When the akhirah dominates to the point of denying dunya, another imbalance arises. One may withdraw completely from responsibilities, abandoning family, work, and contribution to society. But the Qur'an calls to a faith that is lived actively in the world, where worship includes earning honestly, caring for creation, and fulfilling trusts. To reject dunya entirely is to refuse the arena where service and growth unfold. Balance does not mean equal weight at every moment, but harmony between the two. At times, dunya demands effort, work must be done, wealth must be managed, duties must be fulfilled. At times, akhirah demands focus, prayers, remembrance, acts of charity, and moments of reflection. The key is to let neither be forgotten, to let each remind the other. Work in dunya with akhirah in mind, and worship for akhirah with dunya in service. This balance also protects against despair. In moments of worldly loss, the akhirah offers hope, reminding the heart that nothing is truly lost. In moments of worldly success, the akhirah offers humility, reminding the heart that nothing here is permanent. This dynamic keeps the soul steady, preventing extremes of arrogance or hopelessness. The Prophet's life is the living example of this balance. He engaged in trade, cared for family, and guided a community, all while maintaining deep devotion, constant remembrance, and readiness for the eternal. His life shows that dunya and akhirah are not rivals, but threads of the same tapestry, each essential for the full expression of faith. Balance between dunya and akhirah is the key to peace, purpose, and prosperity. To walk with one eye on the world and one eye on eternity allows the soul to live wisely, to act justly, and to prepare for the meeting with its Creator. A heart free from envy attracts sustenance. Envy is a shadow that clouds the light of abundance, shrinking the soul into comparison and bitterness. When the heart looks at what others have and resents it, it shuts the doors of its own blessings. Instead of seeing the infinite mercy of the Creator, it becomes fixated on scarcity, as if the success of another diminishes its own portion. This illusion blocks the natural flow of sustenance, for gratitude and trust are replaced with jealousy and complaint. To release envy is to acknowledge that every provision is measured with wisdom. What belongs to one person cannot be taken by another, and what is destined for the soul cannot pass it by. This certainty frees the heart from chasing shadows, for sustenance is not earned by envy, but by faith, effort, and trust in divine decree. The heart that knows this truth rests in peace, confident that its share will arrive at the appointed time, in the appointed way. Envy weakens the spirit because it constantly compares. It looks outward, measuring life by the possessions, status, or beauty of others, rather than inward, where true wealth resides. In this state, even blessings already present are overlooked, for envy blinds the eye to gratitude. The food on the table, the shelter overhead, the breath in the lungs, all are forgotten when the heart burns with comparison. And when gratitude disappears, the flow of abundance narrows, for gratitude is the magnet of increase. A heart free from envy is a heart open to appreciation. It looks at the success of others and feels joy, knowing that the abundance of one is proof of the abundance available to all. It celebrates rather than competes, for it understands that divine generosity is limitless. The success of another is not a theft from one's own fortune, but a reminder that doors of opportunity are ever present. Such a heart radiates positivity, and that energy attracts sustenance in unseen ways. When envy departs, trust takes its place. The heart learns to rely on the giver of all provision rather than the circumstances of the world. It works diligently, prays sincerely, and trusts patiently, knowing that sustenance is written and cannot be withheld. This trust creates serenity, and in serenity, one sees opportunities clearly, makes decisions wisely, and receives blessings easily. Where envy brings constriction, trust brings expansion. Removing envy also clears the path for generosity. A person who envies struggles to give, for their focus is on what they lack. But a heart free from envy delights in giving, knowing that wealth circulates and returns multiplied. Giving becomes natural when one does not fear that others' gain is one's own loss. Generosity opens the gates of sustenance wider, for the universe reflects the energy that is sent out. A giving heart attracts more to give. The removal of envy is not a passive act, but a conscious discipline. It requires catching the whispers of jealousy as they arise and transforming them into prayers for others' increase. When the heart feels envy, it can instead say, "May they be blessed, and may I be blessed as well." This shift dissolves bitterness and plants seeds of abundance. Over time, the habit of replacing envy with blessing reshapes the inner world, creating a fertile ground for sustenance to grow. Communities thrive when hearts are free from envy. Harmony replaces rivalry, and support replaces competition. Each person uplifts the other, and the collective abundance grows. A single heart, free of envy, inspires others to release their jealousy, creating a ripple of peace that reaches far beyond one individual. In such an environment, sustenance multiplies, for unity attracts divine favor. A heart free from envy is not only at peace, but also magnetic to sustenance. It radiates gratitude, celebrates others, trusts the divine decree, and gives freely. Such a heart walks lightly in the world, unburdened by comparison, open to opportunity, and aligned with the flow of abundance that never ceases. True wealth is when the soul is at peace with its provisions. The world often defines wealth by numbers, possessions, and appearances, but the soul knows a deeper truth. A person may hold treasures beyond measure, yet if the heart remains restless, there is no wealth, only burden. Another may have little in material form, but if contentment dwells within, such a person walks as a king or queen, rich in peace. Wealth is not the abundance of possessions, but the absence of anxiety, fear, and endless craving. When the soul is at peace, even the simplest provision feels abundant. A modest meal becomes a feast, a small home becomes a sanctuary, and clothing that covers the body becomes a blessing. Peace within transforms ordinary gifts into treasures, because the eyes of gratitude see value where others see lack. Without this peace, the heart is never satisfied, always searching, always comparing, and always restless. True wealth, therefore, is not measured by accumulation, but by the ability to rest joyfully in what has been granted. Peace with provisions begins with trust. The soul that trusts the wisdom of the provider no longer questions why one has this and not that, why sustenance flows in one way and not another. It accepts what is given as the perfect portion, arriving in the perfect time. This trust removes the poison of envy and the weight of greed, freeing the heart to live lightly and gratefully. Trust anchors the soul in the reality that everything needed is already near, and what is not yet present will arrive when it is meant to. Many chase wealth endlessly, believing that one more achievement, one more purchase, one more possession will bring peace. Yet peace does not arrive through accumulation, because the desire for more only grows. The soul that learns to pause, breathe, and appreciate what is in hand finds a treasure far greater than endless accumulation could ever provide. The true wealth is the stillness of the heart that whispers, "What I have is enough." When the soul rests in contentment, relationships are enriched. Greed and discontent often create tension, jealousy, and rivalry, but peace with provisions fosters harmony. A person who is content does not compete with others but uplifts them. They do not resent another's success nor boast of their own, because their wealth is internal. This harmony strengthens families, communities, and societies, creating an atmosphere where generosity flows and blessings multiply. Peace with provisions also allows freedom. Those who are enslaved to desires live constantly in chains, bound to the pursuit of more. They are driven by fear of loss, unable to enjoy the present moment. But those who are content are free, for their happiness does not depend on conditions changing. They carry wealth wherever they go, for it lives within them, not in external objects. This freedom makes them unshakable in times of difficulty and humble in times of abundance. Gratitude is the door through which this peace enters. By acknowledging every blessing, no matter how small, the soul softens into contentment. A thankful heart magnifies provision, while an ungrateful one shrinks it. Gratitude shifts the gaze from what is missing to what is present, and in this shift lies the essence of wealth. When the heart begins each day with thanks for breath, health, food, and shelter, it is already living in richness. The Quranic principle reminds that provisions are not only about wealth, but also health, time, knowledge, and relationships. To be at peace with provisions means valuing every form of sustenance, visible and unseen. It means seeing each breath as a treasure, each opportunity as a gift, and each relationship as wealth in its own form. The soul that recognizes these layers of provision walks in abundance, no matter what material measures may suggest. True wealth is the serenity of the heart that rests in trust, gratitude, and contentment. It does not demand, it does not compete, and it does not complain. It simply receives with humility and rejoices in what is present. This is the wealth that no loss can diminish, no thief can steal, and no death can erase, for it lives in the soul, not in possessions. Wealth in the Qur'an is not a mere number or possession, it is a trust, a responsibility, and a means of spiritual growth. The path of ethical wealth is carved not by greed or accumulation, but by gratitude, balance, and purity of intention. The heart is reminded that money is not ownership, but amana, entrusted by the divine to uplift, circulate, and benefit others. It is safeguarded from exploitation through the rejection of interest and the pursuit of honesty in trade, where business itself becomes a form of worship. True prosperity flows when gratitude replaces complaint, when generosity replaces envy, and when giving is understood to multiply rather than decrease what one has. Wealth becomes blessed when it is shared in secret, when it uplifts others beyond the self, and when it is kept free from stagnation by being placed in service of humanity. The Qur'an calls not for denial of wealth, but for its purification, directing it away from arrogance and attachment, guiding it instead towards justice, compassion, and balance between dunya and akhirah. In this vision, contentment is greater than accumulation, for peace of the soul is the highest form of wealth. A heart free of envy attracts sustenance. A life lived in balance invites serenity, and generosity becomes the true measure of success. To walk the Quranic path of wealth is to walk lightly, giving freely, spending wisely, and trusting deeply in the one who provides. It is a roadmap not only for financial blessing, but for spiritual richness, where the soul learns that abundance is not in possessions, but in peace.